You're listening to Titletown Brawl, your Packer coverage 24/7, 365 on the Brawl Network.
Gun, three receivers left, one to the right. Packers need at least 7 yards to move the chains. Rodgers gets the snap. Blitz is on. Rodgers scrambles left, winds up Rainbow. He's got Cobb at the 10 to the 5, to the end zone. Touchdown and a dagger. Oh my goodness. And a touchdown. He did what? The shotgun. This is Brandon Jackson. Trying to pick his way, and he finds his way to the end zone. Touchdown, Green Bay. Cutting left to the 5. He's straight ahead, 10 to the 15. Slips the defender, 20. Spinning his face, still on his feet. 25 30. He's to the 35. Left sideline. Turns it out to the 50. To the 40. To the 30. Down the left side. With a high ball to the end zone. Touchdown. Wow. Hopper is back in town. The Green Bay Packers are world champions of football.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another live episode of TTB. It's me, Jay Andrews, and as always, BJack. What it do, fam?
What's up, Jay? What's up, Hembo, man? I'm just enjoying this day, man. It's awesome. I'm blessed, and I'm ready to talk some football.
Oh, and there couldn't be a more glorious individual, a more glorious mind to join us on such an occasion when you're in such a mood than the famous, awesome, highly intelligent. He is the Goodwill Hunting of sports statistics, ESPN Get Up's own producer, Paul Hembo. Hembokides.
That was quite the introduction. If I had known that you would be so flattering, I would have had you write my wife's wedding vows for me instead. But I do very much appreciate the intro. And before we get going, I just have to say, yes, since you guys are watching, you guys are looking at me, I am wearing an Eagles Super Bowl shirt from a couple years ago, but there is a good reason for it. And that reason, my friends, is this. I'm an avid fan of the team, as you are of the Green Bay Packers. And I remember vividly to this day a certain running back taking a screen from the arm of one Aaron Rodgers at something like the 20-yard line. And at that point, running about 20 yards, scoring a touchdown, putting the Packers up 21-10 over my Eagles in the 2010 postseason, a lead that they would never relinquish. And that is also the first of 4 consecutive games that Green Bay Packers team won en route to the Super Bowl. That person I'm talking, of course, is Brandon Jackson. And I watched that game back today just because I knew I was coming on with you. And I have to say I shouldn't have done that because now I'm in a bit of a sour mood. I vaguely remember that play before today, and watching it back again, it definitely soured my afternoon. But, hey, it was a hell of a screen, a nice run and go. But I figured for the sake of this, I'll rep the Eagles, and it's good to be talking with you. But that's my best memory. Not my best. That is my most significant memory of yours.
Well, I'll tell you this. If I know you was going to say that, I would have had you write my wedding vows.
There's just a lot of flattery going on at the beginning of this show today. I mean, just the bromance and the hugs and kisses just are everywhere today.
And Jay, when Hembo came on, that was the first thing I saw was Super Bowl, and I saw that Eagle, and I just gave him that stare like, he was like, oh, I got a story for it. I got a story.
A lot of us Eagles fans thought 2010 was our year. You made sure that it was not, and it wound up being your year. So that's one that still hurts.
Hey, man, I'll tell you this, though. Like I tell everybody, and I told Jay, that is an awesome stadium to play at. I love those fans. That's my number one place to play as an away game. I love the fans. They're so ruthless, man. I love it.
Philly fans don't mess around at all.
How is it? I was just trying to figure this out. How was it August and you guys were throwing snowballs at our bus? Like, first game was September. And you guys throwing snowballs at our bus. How?
Yeah, right now, I think we mistook you for Santa Claus. But right now, the Phillies are playing like games, but obviously with no fans. And there are people outside the Phillies' closed, locked stadium making noise so loudly that you can hear it on the broadcast. So these guys don't mess around. I'm not surprised to hear that your experience. But it's, you know what? It's a lot harder sometimes, at least, when you're not playing well, to be a fan, to be a player for a Philly team because they boo both sides. And we do so without apology.
Yeah, man, it was just awesome, man.
Yes, that was that was a memorable game. I also remember before your time a game against the Packers, the 4th and 26 game. Freddie Mitchell. That was still with Brett Favre. I want to say in 2003. I want to say
Yes.
the Eagles would go on to lose to the Panthers in the NFC Championship game. But that was a bit of a better experience. The 2010 game still hurts because that year we were moving the ball like crazy.
Yeah.
And with Michael Vick, and like that was like his total emergence.
Yes.
And that was a game that your defense played really well too, holding us to 10 points until that garbage touchdown at the end.
Hey, you know what? Hey, I'll take the trash out anytime.
I hear you, man. I hear you. That was so. And Philly fans have obviously, for the longest time, have been one of these sort of long-suffering fan bases because the Eagles went to 4 NFC Championship games in a row and only advanced to 1 Super Bowl, which is obviously the most memorable thing about Andy Reid's tenure there. Losing to that Patriots team that we lost to went 14-2. So we don't have to. I don't want to hijack this conversation for the purposes of the Eagles, but since I'm talking to you today, I certainly had to remember your touchdown against us in the playoff.
You see why I love this guy? He's just full of everything. It doesn't matter. And speaking of which, let's jump right into it because we don't want to waste any of your time. You're a busy guy. I understand that. And you have to get up at the crack butt of dawn every day to do your job.
Much before that.
On ESPN Get Up, Mr. Famous. Yeah. So.
And I do love your show, and I do watch it all the time.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. When you say I'm up at the bleep of dawn, let me tell you, it's a lot earlier than that, but we can go on.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a conversation, and we had a little recording faux pas, and you were wanting to kind of go back into that, and this time we have the blessing of having my great and honorable partner BJack with us to chime in. So I'm going to give you the floor because, as usual, you know exactly what you want to talk about, and somehow you get me to think and say things that when I wake up from our conversation, I go, was that really me talking? So, Hembo, the floor is yours, man.
I hope I don't hypnotize you guys today, but the assertion that I have made for several months and the assertion that I would make today is that obviously the Packers have been at the forefront of the national conversation largely because of the Jordan Love pick, right?
Yes.
And the narrative nationally, at least, and I work on a national show, so we're only getting the tip of the iceberg, but the narrative nationally is that the Packers have not done a nearly good enough job supplying Aaron Rodgers with the requisite weapons on the outside, particularly the wide receivers, that the choice of Jordan Love and subsequently A.J. Dillon puts them in a very curious position because those are two positions, at least now, that they really had locked up. And you're talking about a division where it's going to be likely more competitive next season. So like the juxtaposition there is very curious for all of us sort of looking on the outside in. But one thing that I don't think is being discussed enough, and again, I'm sort of beholden to the numbers as a stats-based person, as a researcher type. Aaron Rodgers has played average football for the last 3 years, to be totally candid. Now, when you look at Aaron Rodgers' surface-level statistics, it's really hard to make that claim, right? Over the last 2 seasons, he's had 4,000 yards in both and fewer than 5 interceptions in both. Those are the only 2 seasons of that kind in the history of the NFL.
And when you say that, do you mean it's average for him or NFL average?
What I mean is average for the NFL. So so again, the surface level stats that I just provided show that he can still is a prolific passer and very risk averse. Those are 2 obviously very important traits in good quarterback play. But when you look at the Packers offense at large over the last 3 seasons, when you consider how well he's been protected, when you do consider that at least last year he's most definitely had a running game, you can objectively evaluate Aaron Rodgers as a fairly average quarterback for the last 3 seasons in relation to other quarterbacks around the league. Well, one number that I'll provide you. So this is a jumping off point, not the end, not after the equal sign. But over the last 3 years, he ranks 18th in ESPN's QBR metric. Jameis Winston ranks 17th. Jared Goff ranks 19th. Now, that's not the company that I believe he truly keeps because obviously he has the kind of track record that suggests otherwise. But my assertion would be, how long does a quarterback need to play below what we expect him to play, in Aaron Rodgers' case, before we realize, well, maybe this is just the guy that he is, right? We saw last year the Packers, candidly, be carried by a defense in a really good running game, in particular Aaron Jones. And Aaron Rodgers didn't lose games for the Packers, and in my judgment, like being a game manager is something that we're not used to seeing. Like that's a role for Alex Smith. That's not a role for Aaron Rodgers.
Are you saying Aaron Rodgers is a game manager?
I'm saying that last year the numbers would suggest that he was. Aaron Rodgers last year was really, really, really risk averse in a way that I don't quite understand. He led the NFL last season with 68 throwaways. Those are just empty plays, and you could argue that he's not being protected enough. You could argue that guys aren't being open. But when you peel back the onion, the numbers don't really do him any favors there. He was playing behind the number one offensive line in terms of ESPN's pass protection. I think we'd agree that offensive line was really good. And the wide receiver argument, in my judgment, holds even less weight when you consider how well he and the Packers played in the 4 games without Davante Adams. In those games, they averaged 33 points and 409 yards and 6.5 yards per play. That was the best 4-game stretch they played all season long.
Those games, who did they play?
They played bad opponents, but we have a way to adjust for that. So even when you measure offensive efficiency, which takes into account opponent quality, it was still the Packers' best 4-game stretch on offense. So my question is, how much of this are we willing to blame on the wide receivers? Because I think you'd admit Davante Adams right now is a top 10 player at his position in the league, right? How many quarterbacks legitimately have even that guy?
Well, I don't feel like I don't blame the wide receivers. I just blame it. I truly just, I don't know. You kind of make me thinking right now.
Oh, here's my Hembo, I remember this part.
You got me stymied right now.
and I remember this part of this conversation, and what I would tell you is that those numbers would garner to a larger picture that we talk about in a larger narrative. Those numbers would suggest that the narrative that is out there that suggests that Aaron Rodgers is selfish, worried about the numbers and the perception in those numbers, and is a bad leader and selfish because of it. Those throwaways are because, like I told you, Hembo, he solely believes, and we've looked up these numbers, you and I personally, that his ability to take a sack that would garner people to pick on him or throw the ball away that would garner these numbers that you are using to this narrative would be because he knows that if he is on the field, healthy, his team has a 90% or better chance to win, right? Just overall because of his talent. 2, if he can stay on the field for the next down and not make a critical mistake, they have a over 65% chance of converting whatever they need to convert to keep the drive going. Whereas other quarterbacks that take risks and do stupid things and maybe have better numbers are you know what I mean? So this actually, to me, goes to a larger picture that he does not care about the numbers, and the numbers that you're saying, although that narrative can be drawn and is absolutely correct by the numbers, is wrong because of the larger narrative in which we analyze and criticize Aaron Rodgers in, which means we cannot put this in a vacuum the way you were doing right there. We have to look at the big picture and view it that way.
And do you believe this because at times the timing was off and A-Rod was overthrowing some of his wide receivers just because of timing and getting used to those guys?
I would say yes, or at least probably so. But I will also say that you guys watch more tape than I do. I study the numbers. You guys watch more tape. You guys watch the replays. You guys watch the all 22 and all that stuff. So I definitely think there was some expected learning curve in year one of the offense. Like that was just a given. And I think the sort of push and pull that we've even seen go on in the public indicates to me that in year 2 he's much more likely to be comfortable. I mean, he was playing in Mike McCarthy's system for his entire career. But I would also say is, in addition to just those throwaways, which like you said, in part might be because those might be the right plays. Like those are just that number in a vacuum, like you said, needs the context. He also had 85 completions last year in which he gained fewer than 5 yards. That was also the most in the NFL. That's 153 completely empty throws, just to be totally candid. So that is a large volume of throws coming from someone who we've seen be elite not that long ago.
And those negative throws or those less than 5 yard throws mainly became, if you look at and go in and study what the coaching staff has talked about, they came before they adjusted the RPOs. Their RPOs originally in that offense were a lot of the bubble and smoke screens where they adjusted it and became highly more efficient because they went to the RPO slant, which Davante Adams and Alan Lazard especially made, Alan Lazard basically made his name off of a big slant play off an RPO where Rodgers hit him and he took it down to the house, and that's kind of how he made his name. He started to build. So a lot of those, again, in context, in a vacuum, are absolutely correct, but given all of the information, it paints a much different story than what the numbers plainly just say by themselves.
So Hembo, what's your take on when you see A-Rod and the Green Bay Packers versus Drew Brees and the Saints and the New England Patriots and Tom Brady? When it comes down to their defense, why is it that those teams ranked higher than Green Bay? And is it because of the defense not getting the ball back to A-Rod as much? Because you can clearly see on New England that their defense is better than their offense, and their defense is getting the ball back, I guess, at a higher rate. And there's plenty of times where the New England Patriots wasn't putting points on the board, but the completion ratio may have been higher.
Yeah, that's a very fair point, too, because you're talking about two aging quarterbacks playing with really good defenses. I think it's fair and safe to say that the Packers' defense last year exceeded my expectations, at least. What they got from the Smith brothers was outstanding. They had good secondary play. Their biggest issue, of course, was stopping the run because when they had to go to their base package, like that unit obviously deteriorated a good bit. You guys know that better than I do. But what I would say in response to your question is, regardless of how you paint the picture of the defense, the numbers are still unfavorable. So last year, the Packers punted. They had to punt on 44% of their offensive drives. It was the highest rate of any team that had a winning record. All right, that's not a defensive stat. I'm taking defense out of that. They also went 5 for 35 in scoring touchdowns when starting inside their own 20. So when the defense didn't do them any favors and they got the ball deep, the Packers' offense
stalled.
Correct, they stalled. Those are both also unflattering statistics. They're not quarterback specific statistics. But ultimately, what matters is winning games. They won 13 games. They came a game shy of the Super Bowl. So what Aaron Rodgers would probably tell me if he was drinking some scotch next to me right now, which Lord knows he would never do.
Tequila, tequila, Hembo. Tequila. Two fingers of tequila.
2 fingers, that's right. What he would probably tell me is, I did what it was required to win. We won 13 games because I chose to play this way. I sacrificed the stats. But however I choose to mince the stats, the only real way to make his 2019 season look flattering is the risk aversion and not turning the football over, which is a big part of football, but not the only part of football.
So are you saying Aaron Rodgers was a game manager last year?
Yeah.
With the winning record?
I'm generally saying that. Now, if Aaron Rodgers tried to be 2010 Aaron Rodgers, as you know well, maybe last year would have gone worse for that team because he was playing with a top 10 defense, playing with a Pro Bowl running back, and playing with a number one receiver for a lot of the season. So his options were very limited. You have to craft the offensive game plan around the quality of your defense. And they played well in close games last season. They beat all sorts of good teams with winning records, in part by playing good complementary football. That's a hard thing for a stats person like me to wrap my head around because ultimately, like at the end of the day, you win the game. And let's say the quarterback has, last season, the only quarterback with more below-average games by QBR was Mitchell Trubisky than Aaron Rodgers. He was the only one, which sort of raises the question: what are we asking from our quarterback? It's like a leadoff hitter in baseball. Can I deal with this guy? With a really low slugging percentage, he's seeing pitches, he's working walks. His stats aren't going to be great at the end of the season, but the residual effect across the whole lineup is there. We know it's a thing in other sports. What I can't decide is how much of a thing it is in football and how much I should read into those numbers rather than trust my eyes and trust your eyes as it relates to his reputation.
And what I would tell you,
I think I need some scotch right now,
or tequila.
Tequila.
And what I would tell you, Hembo, is that. Going back, if you start, and I can let you dig into the numbers on this, and it's not just a film thing because that would be on your side. What I would tell you is go in and dig into the numbers of how many failed play-action attempt passes that were 20-plus yards down the field were attempted in those deep offensive situations where the defense didn't give them any situation. They got the ball deep and then they're having to punt. Because in LaFleur's offense, his schematic belief is you don't take your shot when you have a short field. You take the shot when they believe and play action will work the best, when they believe you have to run the ball. And so a lot of those first downs when they would get the ball at the 20, 25 or inside the 30, a lot of those were play actions where they were missed by either a bad route or an overthrow or mistiming to their fastest, deepest threat in NVS, who just wasn't ready for that to make those plays. And then what does that happen? That gets put on Aaron Rodgers. Now, I can tell you from watching film, a lot of those I'm looking at and going, if that's Jordy Nelson, if that's Randall Cobb, if that's Devontae Adams, if that's James Jones, if that is several other guys that Aaron has had in the past, whether you agree that they were top of their, they make those plays. And he has to own that, and he has to wear that. But again, that's in the context of the numbers. But I think if you go back, that will sway some of yours, because if those are completed, those are game-changing breakout plays that can completely swing the momentum and the score of a game.
Also, Jay, Hembo, like when you look at it, and Hembo, I know you did the numbers and you will do the numbers. The routes that were thrown short this last year, is that a higher number than the routes that were thrown longer? All right, more +5, because I know you said 41%. And from my knowledge and from me looking at it, there were a lot of balls that was thrown to the back shoulder that neither Adams nor any other wide receiver could catch. They were uncatchable balls. There were hitches. There were back shoulder throws. They're head scratchers. Like, why would you run that route right now when you need a first down or you need to gain yards in a certain area of the field?
Yeah, what I can say anecdotally from watching Aaron Rodgers over the years, and I think you guys would agree, it's that when he is at his best, he's at his best when he is dominating accurately on the perimeter of the field with a lot of those back shoulder balls. Like it was uncatchable stuff. Last season, his off-target rate was 20%, ranked 29th out of 32 NFL quarterbacks. The only quarterbacks with a lower mark were Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, and Josh Allen. Your eyes match the numbers. What I will say is it's extraordinarily obvious that the deterioration of the receiving corps has a lot to do with that, because Aaron Rodgers is used to one thing. He's used to those guys being there. These guys clearly were not. So that could be definitely could be an issue in which Matt LaFleur did not properly equip Aaron Rodgers with the right play calls in those circumstances. To answer your first question about the play action, Aaron Rodgers only attempted 19 passes last year on play action, 20-plus yards downfield. 6 of 19 for the entire season. So the foundation of the Matt LaFleur offense, which he obviously had built in previous stints, I think in Tennessee and in Los Angeles, he didn't bring that over. Whether that's not to say he didn't call them, but it's to say that Aaron Rodgers didn't take many shots.
And Aaron Rodgers is not used to that. Aaron Rodgers is used to taking a shot.
Well, I think we also I think that ties back into Hembo. The risk aversion, though, is because of those shots not being completed. 6 and 19. Now, I would say when he got to a 6 for 10, or he was because that's the entire season. So let's say he's on a stretch where he's 0 for 5. Aaron is the type, I'm not going to keep throwing that ball, because at some point there's going to be a tip, there's going to be an interception, or they're going to expect it and break. And now, again, it goes back to, I believe that if I can cut them 1,000 times, and then when they give it to me, I will kill them. He believes in himself so much, he will do that. He'll even throw the ball away. I mean, we saw balls that were normally 50-50 that were more like 5.95, like a 5% catch chance, and the guy would have to make an awesome play, but there was no chance of interception. You know what I mean? And so we saw a lot of that, and that goes back to the risk aversion, and also to me, Hembo, it goes back to, this was not the full LaFleur. They talked to many a times this was a marriage of 50-50, sometimes maybe 60-40 of what Aaron was used to, and trying to match the lingo and slowly meld it in. I think this year you're going to see the purity in which we expected last year. I just think we were all a year ahead of ourselves on what to expect from the Matt LaFleur offense with Aaron Rodgers at the helm after, like you said, coming off of 13 years of the same language, same offense, same big plays, same scheme, same concept. It's like waking up and putting your slippers on every morning and grabbing your coffee. You'll find a lot of times you're not even awake until after your second cup, and you're wondering how the heck you got sitting in your chair watching ESPN, so.
And so is it true to correct you, Hembo, and add to Jay to say it wasn't Aaron Rodgers that was a game manager, it was Matt LaFleur that was managing the game manager, like a baseball team.
I think that's yes.
When you look at it,
an interesting analogy. Yeah,
A-Rod tends to throw and love to throw the ball deep, and to say he only had 16. All right, so that's basically one per game.
Yeah,
with the below a 33% average.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those numbers are concerning. What it tells me is that either he and LaFleur weren't on the same page, or Rodgers wasn't trusting his eyes. Because you guys watch the games more than I do, but I don't know how many examples there were on play action where he chose to check it down. But last season, 30% of Rodgers' attempts came at or behind the line of scrimmage. 30% was the third highest rate in the league, ahead of only Kyler Murray and Mason Rudolph. Those guys were both rookies. So I can't always tell you the why, because I'm not watching these games the way that you guys are. I think it'll be very interesting this year to see if the downfield passing develops. I'm dying to see it. But what I can say is that he had the protection for it, but he didn't take many chances, and when he took those chances, he didn't have many hits either.
No, he didn't. And the other thing too, I would say too, is I think he had I think 5 games last year where he threw the ball 40 plus times. The rest of the games, I don't think he exceeded 33 attempts. And so I think in some of those games where they get influxed because when Davante Adams came back, they had been running and throwing the ball to Aaron Jones successfully, including that 4-touchdown explosion in Dallas. And the minute they get to L.A. Chargers and Davante Adams is back, they throw the ball 52 times. They lose the game. He's thrown behind the line of scrimmage. So I think you have to look again at when those numbers got inflated to where they were and how they came about, and realize that that's not really telling the story of a 16-game season. We're talking about chunks of offense that, as an analyst, we're sitting here going like, what happened to Aaron Jones? What happened to the two-back sets? What happened to the swings, the motions when you didn't have an Adams? And all of a sudden we're going 4 wides and a tight end and no backs and none of our back. You know what I mean? And we're trying to shove the ball down Aaron Jones against some of the most dominant pass rushing defenses in the league. It didn't make sense. The Sunday night game, week 12 against the 49ers. The first 3 drives, 3 and out. 9 straight passes. The only running action was on fake play actions or and it was punt, punt, punt. What are you doing? So there's context in all these numbers. They're not that they're wrong. That's why I love talking to you, because you don't try to skew them. You just you say what they are for their purity and let us rebuttal. They're not wrong. You can't argue with them, but there is a context and a picture that needs to be painted for the reason of those numbers being the way they are.
That's fair and true. I think one of the tough things in statistics is to separate what happened with why it happened, and that's something that requires someone with eyes on the game, with the kind of football acumen that you guys have. That's definitely sort of outside of my purview and outside my milieu. What I will say is to bring it back all the way to full circle. It's extraordinarily clear that he wasn't highly confident year one of the offense. It's also extraordinarily clear that last year wasn't the first year that the performance dipped. So what I would say is we have 3 years now of data that shows average quarterback play. With obviously with great flashes, we have 3 years of fairly average quarterback play. Part of me wonders how much the injuries over the course of time have sort of built up and affected that stuff. But I think the first half of the season is going to be totally, totally critical for Aaron Rodgers, because I don't think it's too soon to say that the decline isn't here. The decline has been happening. If we don't start to see a big uptick in performance in year 2 in this offense.
So is it safe to say that A-Rod is correct by feeling the way he's feeling, and we're understanding why he's feeling this way when we say that from what he's he's saying, but
saying
not saying.
saying between the lines, right?
That he wants out because he feels that he's been held back? And is it also safe to say, Jay, that A-Rod will get the ball taken out of his hands? Because I remember us talking about that on some episodes before, how that LaFleur will take reps from A-Rod, and I'm like, no, that's the wrong A-Rod. Aaron Jones will get reps taken from him in order to increase A-Rod's confidence in his reps in the passing game, or to give to A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Okay, so I guess what I would say is it's really unflattering to look at some of these numbers and truly wholly endorse what Matt LaFleur did last year. But like I said, you guys made it to the Final Four. The defense was outstanding, and he built an offense in some sense, clearly using the defense as the backbone and foundation of that team. Like some of the great teams in football, not just recently but all time, are teams sort of built on the back of these defenses, playing risk-averse offense, counting on the running game. Where there was a clear disconnect last year is in some very, very odd, like you said, play calling streaks of that kind. Like there was definitely a disconnect and a lack of consistency in terms of what to expect. Now, obviously, some play callers use that as a tactic because the defense is obviously on their heels if you do it properly. But in year one of an offense, it's also clear to me that it's important for all your guys to be on the same page. And if you watch that over and over and over again, when you consider all the throwaways and all the the short throws for very little yardage, like that's a bad byproduct of whatever it was that Matt LaFleur was preaching. And when you consider that this is a guy who was theoretically an offensive mind who has been theoretically again brilliant with helping develop quarterbacks in his past, like you didn't see that, and you have someone who is more talented than anybody he had ever worked with. And in talking to my analysts, they still tell me Aaron Rodgers has elite throws on the field. They show them to me, and like you might some of these balls down the seam last year, like some of these balls he made on the run last year. We're talking about someone that still has a premium talent. So, like generally speaking in sports, when a premium talent isn't performing at a premium level, I go back to the coaching, because if I've seen something happen over and over again in Aaron Rodgers' case and being elite, the difference here between what he was now and what he was before is the coach. That's the one variable, right? That's the one difference. So I think this is as much of a prove-it year for Matt LaFleur as it is for Aaron Rodgers.
So what I'm hearing is you saying that Aaron is on the decline. He's a game manager, and the simple fact that what he's done last year cannot be repeated. Because going 13-3 was very ugly, how they won. And
I mean, look.
The schedule they have this year, do you think they're going to win the way they won last year?
I think it's unlikely. I mean, this is a 13-win team that had the scoring margin of a 9-win team. And over the course of football history, we know that scoring margins are a really good way to predict year-over-year performance, and it would be unflattering in the Packers' case because they didn't blow most people out. Now, of course, a couple of their losses were in blowout fashion, which are skewing those numbers to an extent. I do think that Aaron Rodgers played the role of a game manager last year, whether it be his choice or Matt LaFleur's. I do think that his performance last year is in some sense predictive because we've seen it for 3 years now, not just in one. So I don't think there's any question that the beginning of next season is totally vital for him. In terms of one, you asked me earlier about wanting out, whether he'd want out of that system and that program. I don't know. The finances, obviously, you guys have gone over on the show, obviously suggest that it would be very difficult to trade or cut Aaron Rodgers in the next 2 seasons. So this is like sort of what you see is what you get. I think Matt LaFleur's challenge over the course of this offseason is pretty clear. I need to build an offense around this guy's strength. And I understand they want to keep him in the pocket now because of the injuries. I understand that they want to, use Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams ad nauseum. But in my judgment, like this is absolutely a prove-it year for both parties. Mm-hmm. How you choose to cast the blame on each side really comes down to your tape study.
Okay.
All right. So I got a few notes here, Hembo. Rebuttals. Here we go. All right, let's start with the 3 straight years. 2017, incomplete year. We got to throw that out. He only played 7 games, right?
Okay.
Because the collarbone. So we're going to throw that out because most players, if they don't play at least 8 or 9 games, we usually just kind of throw that out regardless of what the stats do, right? Okay, then 2018, he plays 16 games, but with a fractured knee, okay? A fractured knee that the previous 3 players that had it had season-ending, and he threw for 4,200 yards. I believe it was like 32 touchdowns or 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and it was a Pro Bowl caliber year for the most part on one leg. And that's when this started of the throwaways. He set the NFL record that season for throwaways. But again, if you're holding the ball waiting in a McCarthy down the field offense, your line isn't holding up because of Lane Taylor, because they did not have Elton Jenkins, who could have been Rookie of the Year. He was an all-pro that didn't make it, essentially. You know, he got snubbed. They didn't have him. And you didn't have Billy Turner, so your two guards in the middle were allowing pressure to come straight up the middle. That's how he got injured in the first place. So the throwaway started to come because it goes back to what I said about his belief in staying healthy and staying on the field, gives his team the best chance to win. He knows that from the previous year, which is why he fought to stay on the field. So again, given that in the context, you take those numbers and you look at all those numbers on a guy that is literally playing the position on one leg with some of the best pass rushers in the world, and his 90% of his game his fame has been getting out of the pocket and making throws that will kill you in highlights, right? He couldn't do that. And so it was throwaway. If he couldn't make the check down, he couldn't make the play, the guy wasn't open, it was 3 seconds, and the ball was thrown away. It was either to a receiver or it was thrown away. There wasn't a lot of movement. So that skewed a lot of the numbers, and yet he still had Pro Bowl caliber type of numbers in efficiency rates, yards per play, all that, all right? So that goes against the decline. Secondly, the whole thing about the Matt LaFleur, and I think when I think about not wanting it and taking the ball and the reps away, I think LaFleur is getting him to buy into this, because it's the old adage, quality, not quantity. And Hembo, I have the belief that Aaron Rodgers this year will break the Drew Brees completion percentage in a season on about 100 to 150 fewer throws than Brees did it. And he's going to throw the ball 100 to 150 times, which really equivocates to 4 or 5 less throws per game. But they are going to be
a game manager.
No, because what it's going to be is what you're going to find is it's going to be his numbers. He will have over 4,500 yards, I've predicted. He will have over 30 touchdowns this year, because the explosive plays, they will be completed. They will be there, and therefore he will get to throw the ball down the field more often, but it's just throwing the ball less. So you are going to control the tempo of the game, grind the game down, and you have the most efficient, best arm talent to ever play the game by just about every analyst, right? And now you're putting a defense in a position where if you want to stop the run, Aaron is going to find the guy. And if you're going to not stop the run, they have A.J. Dillon now, who is maybe got bigger calves than Saquon Barkley, okay? And he's 250 pounds, which is bigger than Saquon Barkley. And you have two weapons in Jay Swaggy, number 30, Jamal Williams, and Aaron Jones coming off of a touchdown leading, rushing touchdown, tying, and led in touchdowns. The wide receivers are not as important in this LaFleur offense as the versatility of the backs, which we saw emphasized by the Super Bowl losing team in the 49ers. You take Aaron Rodgers, put him on the 49ers last year, they win that game versus the Chiefs.
Well, I mean, you saw what LaFleur did when he was in Tennessee, right? Who ran the ball more than anybody? Henry. They had a great running back in Dion, and they didn't use him. They paid him and did not use him.
They paid him and did not use him. Obviously, they used Gurley a bunch in L.A., so there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. I'd start by saying I'm fine if you want to discount 2017 because it was injury-shortened, and his performance, even just using the data that we have in 2017, was better than it was in 2018 and was trending towards having an above-average season before the injury. There are a lot of reasons. Some things are excuses and some things are reasons. All right, the reasons that you provided for why his 2018 season was not as good as what we expected are good reasons. They're largely because of health, and in football, health and injury, like all that stuff doesn't show up in the stats, right? That's not the world in which I live. It's good context that's required to contextualize the numbers. But I still think there's a little bit too much data going back to show that we can't necessarily pardon or excuse his play the last few seasons just because of that stuff. Like even last year, you mentioned the completion percentage record, which I think would be highly improbable. And the reason for it is because the completion percentage numbers that we have for Aaron Rodgers are not good. Even last year, when you consider the depth of target and everything else that goes into the difficulty of each pass, we have those stats. Next Gen provides them. he's still ranked 25th out of 32 qualified quarterbacks in that completion stat. What I keep coming back to is there are still too many misses on the field for him. Whether the throwaways are one thing, the short throws are the other. That's 150 throws last year we talked about, which theoretically is like 5 games, right? 4 or 5 games.
Yes.
Obviously unflattering. So the question is can Aaron Rodgers possibly go back to being the highly accurate quarterback on the chunk play? Because the Drew Brees completion percentage record is a farce, and it always has been. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter. It's totally meaningless because they're essentially run plays. And I've long believed that Drew Brees, you can't win a Super Bowl if you're averaging 10, 11, 12 yards per completion. You can't do it. The yards per completion number is the one for Aaron Rodgers that you have to watch because it tells you everything that you need to know, right? In my opinion, his completion percentage, not that relevant so long as it doesn't dip below 60, right? So a lot of those passes, like those 4-yard passes that Drew Brees, throws on 3rd and 7, don't get you anywhere. I think right. That is the sort of, I think that stat and the way that they play is highly overrated, and that shows in the playoffs every year, right?
It's more fashion than anything.
Yards per completion is the number to watch because how much damage am I doing? The yards count the same if you throw them on 1 pass or if you throw them on 5 passes. But if you do it on 1 pass, there's a 80% less chance that you're going to throw it to the other team, and Aaron Rodgers knows that well.
What if I told you that I believed when I predicted his stats on Twitter a few weeks ago that I told you that his yards per pass average were going to be 14.3?
His yards per completion?
Yes.
If Aaron Rodgers averages 14 yards per completion, I would say that would be a really good number for him. I would say it would be a really good number for him because it would indicate to me obviously you're getting some yak, right? You're getting some yak, which is highly important in this offense, especially if they continue, the screen game, the check down game in some sense, and also would indicate to me that he's taking shots. He's taking the shot that are required. Which last year, as I illustrated to you, he didn't do that often. Like he lived in that range, but in front of the sticks way too often for a person with that kind of arm strength. So 14 yards per complete, that's the number I'd watch every game. Forget the yards per attempt, forget the completion percentage. Watch what is he averaging on a per completion basis. That's the kind of chunk damage that he can do. That's the kind of chunk damage that this offense did not do enough of last year, and it's the chunk damage that the great offenses in the NFL do now. Right? You look at some of these great offenses in the league now. They're they play fast. They take shots downfield. They're quick hitting. That's the future, man. That's the model. It's like in baseball. Like if you hit a 3-run home run once a game, it's a lot more valuable than sack bunt, drive someone in on a sacrifice fly.
So what's the narrative that's saying A-Rod is going to be better or worse than last year when the offense looks the same?
It's not going to look the same because I also have talked about with Hembo and BJack, you and I have had this discussion is the addition of A.J. Dillon means those plays where they were Aaron Jones, if you look at his conversion rate on 3rd and 3 or less, right? In between the 20s, and then look at that conversion rate where it's inside the 5-yard line, you almost would think that they're 2 completely different backs. One guy continuously would get stuffed and couldn't make the conversion. Well, if you put him inside the 5-yard line with the chance to score, he would look like a guy that ran like A.J. Dillon. And so to me, that's where I believe the versatility of Aaron Jones, while still, and Jamal Williams had the same issue, and he was supposed to be the power back. They had problems being able to convert short yardage without throwing the ball and putting the illness on Aaron Rodgers. And also, in the floor and the scheme, you need those plays early to set up your double actions, your play actions, and everything else to get you deeper in the game. They were never able to set up because they were punting and they were killing drives, again, skewing the numbers. So I think the addition of A.J. Dillon gives you that opportunity and opens up Aaron Jones.
But I guess I'm looking forward into the distance of because when you look at it, all right, we talked about how the Packers defense, all right, is built more for the pass, and they're using secondary guys to play that linebacker position to come fill a hole where the running game, where the defense can't stop the run.
Yeah.
So with the offense like the Packers, that's kind of stale, in a defense that we really don't know right now that's going to answer the call with the type of opponents that we're playing this year. How can we predict that the offense will play better. Because offense it's three phases to the game: offense, defense, special teams. But when we look at the schedule, the schedule is different from last year because of who our Packer defense will be playing. The opponent is totally different. It's an uncommon opponent.
Yes. Well, we discussed this too, Hembo and I, when we had that talk. And let's switch over to the defense to wrap up the show here. What we're going to discuss here and what I want to bring up is something we ended up talking about off air, and it kind of was an epiphany I had, and it was about the defense and how they're rated, and then the reality of why the teams seem to fail and have trouble, and it correlates with the offense coming out stagnant. The defense, although ranked well in points and everything else, they have an issue, and we looked it up, and you said I was absolutely right. Their conversion rate on 3rd or 8 and longer was terrible. They had to be in a 3rd and 7 or shorter for that defense to actually get off the field on a consistent above average rate, I believe, of 55% or more. On 3rd and 8 and longer, I think their conversion rate, was like 83%. The offense was converting those downs, which is completely killing you and allowing the offense now offensive rhythm. And so if you're allowing 5, 6, 8-minute drives 2-3 times in a game, your offense loses its momentum. BJack, you can talk to that. You get cold. You're starting to watch your helmet's back on. The quarterback. There's almost too much discussion. It's how's the saying go? Paralysis by analysis. And you get back on, and they even talk about it on color commentary. So, can you guys speak to that a little bit of the momentum on your side, BJack, from being a player, and then just kind of what we talked about, because I know you're shaking your head. You know where I was going with that.
Well, for me, I see it as I'm so used to a Packer defense where they were 3-0, or we'll go down and we're 15-play drive, and then defense will come back out and intercept the ball on the second play, and now we're back out there and we're running the ball down their throat because we're up 7-8 points, and now let's start to get in a good groove. Let's get the run game going, and boom, let's hit them over the top. And so it was where the defense was back out on the field within 2 or 3 series, and we only had 10 plays on offense in those 3 series. So that's what I'm used to, and that's what I'm trying to grasp is what's going on now. Because at first, it was the offense was good, but the defense was better, and it was getting us the ball back. Now it's flip-flopped in a way where the defense is good, but not good enough to stop the run, which is keeping the offense cold. And when the offense is cold, they get out there and they're stagnant.
That's really good insight as it relates to the Packers defense, because it was a unit, like you said, they graded very favorably in all the normal stats across the board. That was in large part because of the takeaways, right? And that's another thing that we don't know, like how much can we duplicate that year over year? Because, like you said, when you look at all the things that matter, like the actual results, the Packers defense graded very well. But you look at plays per drive, and you look at 3-and-out percentage, and some of the per drive stuff that defensive coordinators really care about, because it shows much more about the true metal of your defense, because it doesn't take into account like the theoretical bounce of the ball. Packers defense grades much less favorably. So what you definitely can't build your defense on is one that can be run all over if the opponent recognizes that we get you out of your nickel and dime in their case, like the Eagles did on that Monday night game, right? Or defense that relies in large part on the turnovers. Like can they be that solid? Can you have both of those things not go right for you and still win a game? What we learned last year was the Packers, the answer was no, because we saw the 49ers run all over them. We saw games in which they couldn't capitalize on turnovers, and like I gave you the stat earlier, when Aaron Rodgers didn't have a short field, the offense really struggled. 5 for 35 inside their own 20. There's no team in football, in my judgment, that relies more on the complementary piece of offense and defense, that push and pull, than the Packers do.
Right, and that's what I was saying. It's just so tough, especially when your defense can't stop the run, and you got teams spreading the ball out and then running down their throat. That's what tends to happen. And then you got your Packer offense. They're stagnant in a way because defense was just out there on a 15-play drive, and now they're off the field, and then you just go 3 and out. And now the defense is back on the field. So it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of vice versa, where you want your offense to be on the field longer than your defense to give your defense a break to get you the ball back. But now, it's flip-flop where your offense is getting off the field, because I can account for games where I've seen more than 1 or 2 3 and outs, and the defense is back on the field for another long drive.
But see, that's my point, BJack, about talking. We're because of the way the game's rules are warranted, and because the most important position on the field is the quarterback, everything is swayed on the side of the offense. It's always the offense's fault, like you were just saying, and you're an offensive player because you're used to that illness being put on you. What I am telling you, BJack, is the Packers became a favorable statistical defense because their sacks came on 1st and 10, on 2nd and 5, and then they would allow the conversion of long. They would allow a 2nd and 12 to be converted to a 3rd and 8, and then converted to a 1st and 10, right? And so then your offense comes out, they're stagnant, they're out of rhythm, they go 3 and out. So really, it's actually, in my opinion, from what I watch, the flow and the momentum of the game, I put that illness on the defense. I know we want to put it on the offense, but offense is, we all agree, why early in the season, even when the less the starters have played, the less reps they get, the longer we see the preseason extended for the offense in the regular season. In fantasy football, it's much easier to pick a defense early in the season and play them and get points out of them, and then that defense seems to fall apart by week 7, right? Because the offenses catch up.
New England.
It is, right, it's a more intricate thing. It takes everybody, working together on offense and not blowing it. So when you get out of rhythm, when you're stagnant on offense from your defense, so that came to my point of wanting us to try to come up with a stat, Hembo, of what is a defensive ratings on critical downs and distances in critical moments of the game. Because if I get a sack on 1st down and make it 2nd and 15, but then I give up a 9-yard run and then a 20-yard run, what good did the sack do? Now, it looks great in it, and it's going to drive my rating up, but you failed in a critical down and critical distances to stay on the field and not give your offense the opportunity to ride the momentum that they may have had, or to go out there and gain momentum after a short period of time and put the illness on the other team's defense.
And that's why I feel like they had to go out and get another linebacker that's able to run, because when you really look at it on those 2nd and 3rd and longs, what did they do most of the time? They spread them out and they run the ball. Why? Because you have an extra DB in there. All you have to do is get that lineman to get on that DB, and that's your 1st down. So the Packers have to go get another linebacker to be able to stuff the hole.
Yeah, there was no question that was a major issue for that defense last year. And the 2 numbers I'll leave you with are this. On 1st and 2nd down last year, 1st and 2nd down, the Packers defense last season ranked 28th in the NFL in yards per play allowed. They allowed 6 yards per play on 1st and 2nd down. Further, in the Packers, again, I'm going to use the regular season and the postseason here. And their wins last year, their scoring margin off of turnovers was plus 62, right? In the losses, it was minus 24. So what that tells me is this. What it tells me is this. This team is highly, highly reliant on the giveaway takeaway battle, which most teams are, but very few to the extent that the Packers were last year. And secondly, it's unlikely that the Packers defense will be able to sustain the success that they enjoyed last season if they're going to allow 6 yards of play early and down and distance, which is exactly what you said earlier. It is a sort of statistical anomaly in their case, but this is another case in which the stats and your eye test match.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, Hembo. Let's leave everybody with some of your famous Hembo mind brilliance here, man.
Well, I actually was planning on coming on the show and preparing a trivia question for Brandon, but I did not. What I did instead was just torture myself by watching his touchdown against the Eagles like 3 times, and chose to stay away from that. What I'll say is this: I'm not sure if you and I will get the chance to talk before the season starts, but I will say, sort of to leave you on sort of an ominous note, I do believe truly that Chicago is going to be considerably better this year, that the Lions will be considerably better this year, and that the Vikings at worst will be about the same. So the quality of the Packers could be as good as they were last year, if not better, But like you said, given the schedule and the quality of the division, which I think is probably among the more improved, if not most improved in the NFL, some of the sort of underlying uncertainties that I have from a statistical standpoint, again, giveaway, takeaway, the close, the scoring margin, like those kinds of things, the bounce of the ball, like those kinds of things that people like me sort of get a little skeezy looking at in the Packers case. Like, I think you could be looking at a team that could be just as good and see 3 or 4 fewer wins, and that's if they stay the same.
I want to clarify. When you say better, you mean better as an individual team or better than the Packers?
As good as they were last year, as good as the Packers were last year. The Packers could have the exact same season they had last year and go 9-7.
No. I'm talking about those other teams. You said the Bears and the Lions and the Vikings being the same. But you said the Bears and the Lions. Do you see them being better than the Packers or better as an individual team climbing their record up to a greater number?
Yeah. You're getting me on the You're getting me on the record here, and a very, very good line of questioning, I have to say. My opinion is that the Lions will remain the worst team in the division because they have too far to go. Right? That's my opinion. I think the Bears and the Vikings will both have a better record than the Packers.
Ooh.
The Packers. In a nutshell, my rationale for it is this: the Bears' defense is better than any unit in the division, in my opinion. It is an outstanding unit on all 3 levels. They're dominant.
With better players. With secondary, I would say better secondary players because I know all those guys, and man, they're putting it together. But once again, it's going to be that offense that truly will have to carry them because the defense will carry them, and they have been carrying them for the last 3 years. But that offense is going to have to step up and carry them to the Super Bowl.
My trust is that Matt Nagy can produce a team that has an average offense. They win 10 games because of how good the defense is. The Vikings, I just generally trust the program. I trust the consistency. And right now, this is going to be a provocative opinion. I think Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback in that division. I think that makes a big difference too. I mean it.
So are you saying the Bears are the 2019 of the Green Bay Packers? The 2020 of the 2019 Packers?
I think you could definitely see that kind of jump. What I see right now, given what we know about the rosters, is a situation in which the Bears and the Vikings both win something like 10 games, and the Packers win something like 8 or 9 games. I see
but
that.
Is that with what's the name at the helm? What quarterback would be at the helm?
Well, I think Nick Foles will be their quarterback, and I have good reason to believe that's the case, although I do think they'll give Trubisky every chance in the world for a million obvious reasons. But what I'll say is this, and this is going to be provocative, and I know your listeners won't like it, but if you're just looking at strict on-field performance, and we're going to forget about all sorts of, we're forgetting about reputation, we're forgetting about all the stuff, like all the fame, all the the national nonsense. Like right now, if you look at their play in the last couple seasons, Aaron Rodgers is the 3rd best quarterback in that division. So my question is, how much does he elevate himself, and how much can the Packers defense elevate him? I think there are a lot of ifs as it relates to the Packers this year that I'm not comfortable jumping to, especially with how little they improved in the draft.
Wow. Whew, I lost BJack's picture, so I don't know what his face looks like, but I can just only imagine what his face, because I know what I'm feeling when you say those types of things. I love you, but you make me want to fight you.
I would say if you put me in charge of the over under at Vegas, my number for the Packers would be 8.5.
Whoo! See now,
is that just because I single-handedly beat your Eagles to go to a Super Bowl?
Salty.
Yes, obviously that is the only reason. I think the Packers are going 14-2, but had you not ruined my childhood, there's no question. That's the case. Like I call it like I see it. Like I come on the program and I tell you, I genuinely think the Packers are going to regress this year by a lot. And I think it's going to be in part because the division is better. I think it's in part because I think some of those things are sort of unlikely to be able to repeat itself year over year. And I think the schedule is really tough. The seventh playoff team helps a lot, but I still think the team's going to regress.
And that's what gets me. It's not anything else but that schedule. That schedule is tougher than last year. And to say that the Packers will repeat a 13-3 season, with that same team with a tougher schedule, that's hard. That's hard
really
to
hard
say.
to do.
That's hard to say that they will, and it's hard to say it right now.
Really hard to do without a truly elite unit, neither the offense nor the defense.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to make this one statement, and I'll let you have a quick rebuttal, and then we got to close out the show, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to tell you this. In a season where we are going to be it's already been greatly affected by COVID-19, with a position that is probably one of the hardest transitions from college to the pros, given that most of the teams that BJack seems to think are going to have these prolific offenses to put pressure on the defense, they are relying on what? First-round rookie tight ends and wide receivers who did not get an offseason, who are not going to be on the same page as the equal level of talent has in the past. Therefore, to me, I will bet on the teams that have veterans that don't have a lot of new and incoming moving parts to integrate into their system to at least be able to stay the status quo. To me, it is much more likely, given the situation in COVID, that teams like the Packers are more likely to increase by a game or two in their record from last year than they would be in a season like this, given the same normal circumstances. I think it's just going to show up that the people that they're depending on, they're not going to be ready, and and therefore, as great as their talent and all that, there's only so many OBJs and so many guys out there that really just turn it on in their rookie season and become stars. Most receivers don't hit till their third year. Most of them are their fourth and fifth year on their second team. It's just the way it is. It's just how receivers are. And to say that the Dallas Cowboys are going to knock them out because they went and got, their guy in Ruggs and these guys got Rieger and they got Ayuk. Well, how much are they going to be really able to contribute with no great understanding of the offense and no time to get up to speed where the normal rookie class is?
I think there's a lot of merit to that. I think there's no question that this year continuity will matter more than any other by a factor of 10 for a million obvious reasons. I think that's clear. I think what Brian Gutekunst would say is, I agree with you, and that's because what people are missing is our player development program. So what they'll say is look at the fact that they didn't help Aaron Rodgers and the lack of wide weaponry on the outside and all that stuff. And that's what everyone is saying, and I get it. And I get why. What Brian Gutekunst would probably say is our player development program is good enough to elevate the people that we already have to become impact players more so than what drafting a rookie in the first round as a receiver, for example, would provide us. And their track record of doing so, candidly, is pretty good. So I think there's a lot of merit to what you said, and I bet you that same sort of logic and line of thinking is why the Packers did what they did in the draft.
Brandon, you can close us out.
I'll close this out with this, and it's a question. It's a yes or no question. Will Jalen Hurts start at any point at a time for Carson Wentz this year?
Yes.
And I already know why. Thank you.
That's like a drop the mic, so we're just getting the hell out of here now. Thanks for hitting up our show. We love you all. Hit him up on the Twitter at BJackson32. I am at UPJ33. On the Instagram, he is Brandon Jackson29, and I am J_Andrews033. Hit us up on Facebook by follow, liking, sharing our page by searching Titletown Brawl. And don't forget to give our parent company some love, The Brawl Network. Hit them up on the all-new website, thebrawlnetwork.com. Go there, sign up for free. It's your one-stop shop. The Brawl has it all, baby. Don't forget to give them some love on social media. Hit them up on Twitter at Network Brawl. Follow, like, and share their Facebook page by searching The Brawl Network. And also search The Network Brawl on IG and hit them up there too. We'll be back next Wednesday live again. We have Rico Graziano, a frequent guest on the Full Monty Sports Show. Will be our guest at 6 p.m. Eastern. Love you all. Go Pack Go. Have a great week. Peace.
Martyrs out of these fathers and rose up all of his daughters to glorify him with honor. Man, I swear Thomas Jones with a head did. Now it's flying everywhere. She don't care what her head did. She an egg, yeah, caught up in the egg, yeah. Probably why she cut her like Jesus, just reappeared, yeah. on his feet. I wanna do the type of shows that the Lord wanna see. What I mean, if I can make the whole church clap, it ain't a clap in the heavens, then that clap just a clap, clap. For his son glorified, sin mortified. The Holy Spirit going word that truth ain't watered down. It's sound doctrine, gets birthed in the common now. Nothing wrong with singing loud, but that ain't where the power's on. The church has been clapping at weak sermons, leaving the weak hurt. No one's changed by Sunday service. We need discernment, check what you be affirming, cause the church can be full of members but empty in conversions. Preach the gospel and stand back, look for change.